And we're live, streaming to you from Founders Park in historic Ocean Grove, New Jersey. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm, and we're delighted that you're here to join us for our unique podcast community. We're so excited. We've been growing steadily. We just hit 1,438 subscribers today, and thank you so much for helping our community grow. Please subscribe on YouTube and smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on our upcoming guests and topics. To see our over 160 past episodes, check out our website at www.jasontram.net. Again, that's www.jasontram.net. Please like and share our videos. And remember, you can chat in questions of the guests. We love it when our audience joins in the conversation. And we have a wonderful guest today. We have one of the world's great luthiers, Lukas Wronski, who is a distinguished artist, in many ways, a violin maker, a musician, and a painter. He was born in Poland. He started playing the violin at an early age and became interested in violin making at age of 13 when he started apprenticing at a local violin workshop. He completed his undergraduate and his master's degree in violin making in Poland. Then he apprenticed in London, England, and Cremona, Italy, certainly the epicenter of the violin making world. In 2007, Lukas came to the U.S., first working in Oklahoma, and in 2009, moving to New York City, where he started working for many dealers and well-known violin shops in Manhattan. In 2012, he started Lukas Violins, located first in Queens, and in 2014, located in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Welcome, Lukas.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you so much.
That's quite a lot to say in one breath, but you certainly have an incredible reputation in the field, and I had a great time watching some of the videos of you making such artwork. They're violins, but they're also so much personality in each one.
Yes, I'm always trying to, whatever I do, I make or I create something, I'm trying to do something unique and create a piece of art, a violin, or adjust a violin, or fix the instrument, or anything. Even, I'm trying to have this approach, which is something incredible, something special. And violin making is definitely something special. And it's kind of whole my life basically. I am in between instruments, violins, as you see. It was like this for all my life basically, and my family, they are all musicians and painters and artists. So I grew up in
Oh,
music.
wow. So you grew up in that tradition, and it's bloomed from there.
Music, yeah. Nobody was actually a violin maker, so I'm the first violin maker in the family, and so they were kind of um, interested, and very happy that I actually could do it. Why? Because I was interested in the music field, but I also like art. I also like painting, sculpture, and I was very interested in the manual things to do, artistic things. So fortunately, in Poland, we have an amazing tradition, not only music, like arts and woodworking, but also in violin making. So I was introduced to this pretty early, when I was 13. And you mentioned that I started violin making when I was 13 because I entered a violin atelier in my little town close to Krakow, Limanova, and then it started. the story, I was like, wow, what is this? What is this place?
So tell us about the internship, the mentorship process for a young violin maker. That must go back hundreds of years, that kind of tradition of teaching and learning.
Oh, yes. This tradition goes back to centuries, and I think whatever I do right now, I'm repeating the same thing. It's like, I think in classical music, we are creating something which musicians maybe 100 years ago, they basically were doing similar, and the teaching and conducting and everything. Of course, there are different styles which are different these days. There are different ideas, and each violin maker today, of course, I think violin making went so quite far this day, so the level is really high, But it's true that tradition of 500 years, when the first violin, were made. We don't know actually where.
Take us back to there, because we go from the Rebec in the Renaissance period, and then we see the slow growth of the violin. What are those early violins? We don't know where they're from, right? But what describe them to us? How did the instrument come out of the Rebec?
There are three how do you say it? Three instruments kind of logical development of three instruments. One is lira da braccio, rebec, and Renaissance fiddle. So those three instruments, they gave us a violin, and we don't know, of course, when exactly and where it happened. Many people say it's in Italy. Of course, in Poland we say it was in Poland. In Germany they would say, yeah, no, we made the first violin. But I think it was the time period in this time that it was simultaneously similar all Europe, spread out the music, the art, Renaissance, that actually many things came from Italy to Northern Europe.
There was so many crossover between the courts too. The great musicians traveled.
Everything, and in Poland, that time was one of the most interesting and richest country in Europe, and more powerful like Italy. I mean, Polish King Zygmunt August II married actually Bona Sforza. She was a queen, Bona Sforza, and from Milano. That's why she brought all of the artists, musicians to Krakow. So Krakow became to be one of the most flourishing place in the central northern Europe. So music was very interesting in Poland and of course in Italy. That's why I think this connection between those two courts and it gave us, as we say, a lot of influences and the violin. I mean, so rebec, of course, is the bowed instruments and used in centuries before the creation of the violin, and even today is used by Arabic music. Fill, and of course the most famous instruments, violins, were established later in Italy in Cremona. So Cremona is the most famous place. So the instruments from Italy, from Cremona city, is sought after until today.
Well, why don't we? What makes the Stradivari, the Guadagninis? What makes those so special? That as a luthier, what makes them so special when you work on these instruments? Correct?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't have any Strat now, but I wish. But there's many great instruments in New York, owned by great virtuosos. So many times they visit my shop, and I have to adjust it. I have to fix little things, of course, and they are very precious. They have something incredible, not only because it's the tag, the name Stradivari, but they have this history. They have this beautiful tradition that we can learn from as a violin maker. And I think each violin maker, when we want to see the Stradivari, it's like for the painter to see Michelangelo or something great, which is
we may see those as like I'm a conductor. Yeah. I've worked with soloists with Stradivarius, and I've had them in the orchestra. I've seen them, but I don't get to take them apart. I don't get to take the Da Vinci and work on it. What's it like to deal with these instruments, deal with the imperfections, to work on because you must have to do some real interesting work on these instruments.
Yeah, I mean, usually we don't, of course, want to take them apart, and even musicians are very afraid to do too many changes, because they are worth millions of dollars, and so we want to save as it is mostly, But of course, weather changings and stuff like this. So usually there are small adjustments, sun post adjustments, because in New York, winter and summer there's a more humid, more dry. So this is my actually also very important work in New York, area for that I serve for kind of musician, that I adjust those great instruments. I'm not necessarily have to take them apart or fix them. Of course, sometimes it's a little open seam or a little bit playing the fingerboard, correcting the bridge. These little things which old instruments always have. And always, one day is good, second day might not be good. So those little things we always adjusted with really carefully, expertise, and which we actually gained for many years. I had to learn in many years to have this right approach to this kind of instrument, because you can think that, oh, I'll be afraid to touch this kind of instrument, but of course we have to learn how to take it, how to look at this, and how to take care of it, how to take care of the violin, which is worth $10 million. You know what I mean? So we just have to take it and think about the piece of art, but think what to do. We have to, of course, many times I have to know what musician likes and what actually musician expect from me and what he or she would like me to fix, you know. So many times I have. It's nice when we have this great connection between me and other musicians, fellow musicians. So many times we are very good friends, and in between, so
That
they
makes
call.
complete sense because their instrument relies on being in
Yes.
proper maintenance and control, and it has to be to their exact specifications, and you're the guy to do that.
Yes, yes. No, I'm still learning. I'm still trying. I cannot, but this is normal. We all learn all our life, and this is actually our lifetime studying. To study what is the violin, what is the wood, how to do it, how to make it, how to play it. Right. This is constantly studying, and I think we still don't know. We still don't know how actually Stradivari made this beautiful violin, and maybe we will never know exactly because it's almost impossible. And of course, there's another time to study what we like, and I'm also interested to make my instruments or my models or my creations. Not, of course, start with the old tradition, but I'm also very open for something new, something more kind of
Let's talk about
individual.
tradition and modernity.
Yes,
With classical music, we always have this care for the past, but we always put a modern stamp on it because living people are creating it today.
yes.
What part of violin making has been consistent over the centuries, and what part of the violin has been changing steadily?
Consistent is, I mean, way we make them. Of course, there's many factories or bigger companies all over the world. And these days is mostly in China, but they actually create amazing instruments. We cannot say that something from manufacture it might be bad or something. No, they might create very great instruments. But so the way we make them, the way we choose the material, wood, is actually the same like we used to do in from the beginning. Maple, spruce, sometimes willow, poplar. For bows is always Pernambuco, or these days maybe we look for a little bit different type of wood for bows, just to say Pernambuco, because in Brazil there's a little problem with the forest. So, but we look for different materials, but mostly materials what we use for violin making is the same.
Hmm.
Tools what we use for violin making is the same. If you go to another room, to my workshop, you can see the same tools like people used a long time ago. I'm collecting. I'm trying to find even old wood and old tools from vinyl makers because they have some already history. The metal from chisels are kind of better when it's old. I kind of like those stuff. So it's the same thing. This is incredible how we actually keep this little details, how they used to make the violins, and the way and all the factors and physics are the same. Difference, I think, is maybe we make them a little bit faster, maybe we know more, and so the style of each maker these days is and the place where they are made, like Italy, France, or New York, China, or Poland, the style it become to be more international, more global. I mean, we can
Like
still.
everything in the world, everything's become more global because we have so much more communication with each other. Uh,
Yes,
I'm fascinated by, and I teach my undergraduates that music is always evolving based on the culture, right? It has to evolve, otherwise
yes,
it atrophies. And when you look at violin making, the bows have changed drastically as we've got the torque bow, and the strings
yes,
have become gut to nylon wound. So there's always innovations being made, and
yes,
um,
exactly.
and it's just fascinating how we adapt technology to older art and it makes new art.
I think it's very important to go forward. I mean, for me, it's many times boring to do and repeat many things, which I do. But I'm still finding making violins, classical violins, fascinating. Oh, fascinating. Even if this violin looks the same like others, I see it different because it's mine. I can do something else. But of course, um, it may look like something which we kind of repeat the tradition and it's boring and maybe it's the same like in the art field, it will be something which many artists wouldn't get it, because they have to shock, they have to really go outside boundaries, what I mean, because this is how it should be of how we have to make a name and stuff like this. But I think vinyl makers has a little bit more difficulties in this field go something too crazy, too much outside the box of the violin, because then maybe it won't be a violin, right? Or maybe if we make a bow which is too strange, or maybe with actually few people make it. Even Vion, a French maker, makes from a bow metal bow from metal. But of course, nobody really approved this so much because it was maybe too heavy or something. So it's a little bit difficult because instruments are not only how they look like or how they you can actually watch them as a piece of art, but they have to be actually a musical instrument. And
Functional.
a function exactly, they have to be really functional. So when I make instruments, even those with the different shapes, like you see here, I made few different instruments. This is Venus de Milo with the shape of Venus de Milo sculpture, which is goddess of love. I'm not sure if you see it well.
Gorgeous.
This is of course um, in the proportion of the violin. The wood is traditional spruce maple, so it sounds like a violin. But of course, I couldn't go. I could make a different shape, different idea, which I've made it. But of course, I cannot go too much far because then might be I maybe will. I think I would like to, because I if I find more time in the future, actually I would like to experiment with different things, different ideas, and maybe even go farther than I am now, because I think my mind is open and for this, and I think I would love to
Now,
create
tell us
great.
about how you came up with the concept to make the Venus de Milo violin, and how many of these have you made?
This is only one. This is
Only
one
one.
example, unique. Concept was somebody gave me the idea to make something else, and in Poland, actually I've made this in Poland, and like something inspired by not only classical model. So I think I've seen some painting or picture of woman, like putting to the violin, like the shape of the violin. It's like, wait a second, let's make a violin then,
We're on to something special. It's
something
amazing.
special, like a Venus. And as I'm saying, I was studying a lot of also art, Venus de Milo, and it was, I love Greek culture, and all of the sculptures, mythology, and I think Venus was a great idea to put to the shape of the violin, which was
Hmm.
very naturally. So you can see this arm with this cat breast with the head of the Venus also, but the head of the Venus I took in this particular violin from the Botticelli painting.
Could you
The
bring
two
that
are
closer to
there.
the camera? That is so stunning.
I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah,
look at that. Wow.
yeah. So the Venus is most from. Uh, I'm not sure if I say correctly in English. Um, born Venus born. It was the
Sure.
Botticelli painting. So
Hmm.
basically, uh,
Wow.
this is the head of the Venus.
Just
So
amazing. So now the scroll work doesn't actually affect the sound at all, right? So that's purely artistic creation. You could experiment and do some wild, beautiful things there.
I mean everything somehow it is kind of important, responsible for the sound. I couldn't put a too heavy scroll or with the metal because we'll be buzzing or something. So actually there is some kind of thought that it is responsible. But of course I could put any phase or any something else, and of course the sound, it won't change the sound. But it's important to know that what we can do it or what not. If in the shape too. So because this shape is very important, and then so we can play it with the bow and everything. So those stuff, like the shape of the violin, which was taken from those three instruments that we were talking before, rebec, lira da braccio, and fiddle. Actually, they were make it as a perfect violin, of course, which also Greek thought design of the perfections, beauty of the kind of mathematics thoughts. You know what I mean?
Symmetry, right? The symmetry,
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, geometry. So the violin, it is like this. So if you see instruments from Andrea Amati or Stradivari. They are really perfect with the geometry, with the Greek thoughts and ideas. You know, at that time it was used in architecture, music, everything, and also in the violin making. So the violin, we can say, so somebody say that the violin is one of the most perfect thing invented by humans. So might be true because it's actually really perfect in shape, you know, and also not only perfect in shape, but also it might be perfect in the voice, like it closest to the human, right? So this what we violin makers we want to achieve the most, not only the most beautiful violin and which is comfortable, which is nice, beautiful, and musician can like it, but of course this unique sound, you know. So the sound um, can be great, amazing, and it can actually last for a long time. We don't want to make a violin which is only for a short time and maybe is losing the sound quickly. You know, I mean that's why we're
What is it
studying.
about the wood? What is it about, when you see instruments in museums, the brass instruments break down after 75 years or more. What is it about the overtones on the wood that makes the overtones greater over the years?
The wood which is used, maple and spruce, is the best for instrument because it has those qualities, you know. And this is maple. This is maple, which is one piece. And it's always we search for perfect wood and we select it, you know, carefully. It not only must be aesthetic, you know, like a beautiful flame or has to be light, you know, but also has a quality, you know, like has to be strength, has to has a, and also has to be kind of flexible, so the wood is vibrating itself. So it has a very good kind of it has also kind of very good resonance, you know. So before we
Where do
make
you
the
find
violin,
your wood? How do you select, how do you choose?
uh, this is quite complicated always to find the best wood because of course the trees are always around us, but the best wood mostly are coming from um, the Alps, Carpathian Mountains, you know, in Europe, you know, like you know, when I was in Poland, I was actually so for when I was searching wood, it was on the south of Poland because you have to you have to get the wood which grows in the higher altitude. So basically, somewhere when it's very cold, very strong climate. Many American makers they get wood from Canada, you know, because Canadian wood is actually quite good and might be good for instruments. But of course, European wood might be a little bit more kind of lighter, maybe kind of resonance. And I'm trying to get as best wood as I can. Many times, my wood for my violins, like I was getting for older violin makers. So, like when I made this violin last year, for instance, here I made this instrument in 2020 during the pandemic. This wood has almost 60 years old, of course, after it was cut. And this
Wow.
was particular wood. I bought it. I was very lucky actually, that I could have a beautiful wood after amazing maker Louis Bellini. He used to he passed away, and I could get the wood after this amazing maker, you know. And I knew that from his wife that he was also particular with wood, and he got this wood from Europe many years ago. So always we look for amazing wood from different makers from different places, and then and of course older wood is better, but not necessary. But we say that at least 6 7 years it has to be stored, the selected wood, after it's cut. So you cannot really make it instrument with the fresh wood. You know what I mean? And it's very important to know that all the structures, all the time when to cut the wood, how to cut the wood also, and during the winter and what time, which day. Those things are very important. So for people who cut the wood, they have this knowledge, and we actually always when I buy the wood, I always have to, and I always ask if somebody really know how to cut this wood, how to prepare the wood, because then we really know that this kind of that this violin has a really great wood and I can make a great violin. So the source of the wood, where I get and what kind of wood I get is really crucial, and is the first thing that the violin makers are looking for. You know what I mean?
Take us through the process of creation of a new instrument. From so you've sourced the wood from the best possible maker. You've analyzed it. You've listened to it. It's got the right resonance. What's the next step?
So the next step, of course, is you have to decide it what kind of violin you want to make it, viola, cello. There are some makers that specify mostly in the cellos, violas. I'm trying to do everything. I make also viola, um, cello too. But then you pick up the model. You know what I mean? Sometimes you pick up the models from Stradivari, Guarneri. So as I'm saying, many violin makers during the whole history of violin making, we are inspired and we are making copies of the most famous instruments, mostly from Cremona. Like we mentioned before, Stradivari, Guarneri, Guadagnini, Amati. If we talk about violas, there's a Maggini, Gasparo da Salo, and Guarneri. So many makers actually are making those copies to be as closest as possible, maybe, to the most famous instruments, right? So we basically, it really doesn't matter if we are making copy of Stradivari or Guarneri, and really it doesn't mean that when you make a copy of Stradivari you will have a Stradivari sound, or Guarneri violin you will have a Guarneri sound. Oh, they will be more darker, more deeper, because it's not really true. I guess, I mean, because there's so many different stuff and factors, ideas that actually there are in between. What kind of arching you do, what kind of thicknesses of the wood, what kind of wood, of course, as we were saying before, and everything. So basically, but those are steps which are very important. So this particular violin is actually based by model of Guarneri, you know. But I also have a Stradivari models. This viola is actually also based on Guarneri, Sometimes there are little details that many musicians maybe know, maybe not. Maybe they learn during the time what is the Guarneri style, what is the Stradivari style. There are by F-holes, by the scroll, by a little bit maybe style of the corners here. You can say sometimes, oh, this is style of this. You know what I mean? And of course, during the years, each violin maker it become to be an expert, right? So we can say also, oh, this violin is from France, this violin is from Italy, England, and because like I mentioned before, many instruments in the past they have the similarity to the school and to the country because they were coming from England, they were coming from France. So those instruments today, like French instruments from Mirecourt, from Paris, basically sometimes we don't know who made it, but we can say, oh, but this is a French instrument, or like
Or
Italian.
the school of the luthiers who made it. You could probably
Yeah,
find those traits.
because the tradition was actually they're coming from the fathers, grandfathers, and also of schools and teachers, and they have those students, alumni, and they were kind of repeating the style. Some people from different countries were traveling to Italy to learn, so they were coming back to the city and they were trying to copy the Italian style of Amati's style. So
Just
sometimes
like
you
Gabrielli would travel to Venice to learn the newest style, he'd bring that back home with him and take the polychoral style, or he'd take
exactly.
the monody, and that's the way that we distribute knowledge. It's amazing how it just kind of
Yes,
spreads around.
and there's really a lot of knowledge because there's a lot of confusion too because sometimes somebody travels or took another style, or there was also during the years there was a lot of copyists, lot of makers who actually were copying of the actual maker. The best copies even they were in England, in London during the Stradivari time. They were a copy of Stradivari himself because they were so famous, they were expensive, so they knew that they can make it and they can sell it as the original instrument. So there's a lot of fakes, a lot of copies during all over the place, the market. So my also work here and job is here not only making violins, repairing, but also to be like an expert. advisor, consultant, to know which violin is which violin was is which for made by by the certain maker. Sometimes musician comes to me and asking what do you think what it is, what do you think how much it costs, or to do appraisals or to do certificates. I mean, of course, many times I have to ask about certificate opinions also my colleagues, which are all over the place. Of course, it's hard to find, so I have only few here in the States and Europe that are the best expert in the world and they know the field. So when we have a great instrument, and sometimes we don't know what it is, we have to investigate it. We have to make sure.
Detective work.
Detective, yeah, and this is step by step. These days there's a lot of technology. Actually, when you asked before, what is new, how we went far. So this technology actually helps us not only to actually know more about the instrument, but actually to detect the wood, how old is the wood, and we can actually find out approximately where it's from, the spruce, and how old it is.
Amazing.
And then this is the first step. If we decide, and if we have the violin which looks old, and suddenly we have the, the kind of, knowledge that this violin is actually the wood is from 18th century, not 17th. Of course, we have an idea that this is not so old, and then we go by style, but by the different ideas, like painting, like expert for painting. There are also details, how he did it, how he made the varnish, how he made the different little things, which by comparing different instruments at the same maker, we have this kind of conclusion. Oh, this might be this. You know what I mean?
We had Nathan Meltzer on the show early on, one of the first 15 episodes or so, and he plays the Totenberg Stradivarius. And the story, it was like a Hollywood movie on that story.
Yes,
how it was stolen and then it was in bad shape and someone had to repair it and bring it back. And it's just fascinating. Like it's almost like the red violin,
Yeah, I know the story well because I know one of the
Of course.
Of the member of the family. He was a famous Polish teacher, musician, violinist, and it's a very sad story, of course. But it happened many times, like there were stolen Stradivaris, or during the war, Poland before the Second War had banned numbers of great instruments. But these days there is maybe one, left in Poland because they were stolen. The label were taken out, or they were painted. There were so many different stories about the old instruments because during this time during the war, Germans knew about them, knew about art. They were stealing. So of course the first thing was what do you have, and everything was basically took from the possession of the musicians. Or during the communist time, of course, if there was anything left, people were selling them for some money on the West, right? So it was very hard to find in Poland during the communism and later. Even these days, it's very hard to find nice old instrument. I'm in touch many orchestras in Poland these days because many Polish orchestras right now they have great funds, and they're actually looking for those great examples, great instruments, which I'm helping them to actually find something nice, something good sounding, so they have something back, in the because it's very important to have this as an
That's
orchestra
amazing.
to have a great sound,
And there's so many wonderful virtuosos from Poland. We had King Augustine on the show, and we
yes.
actually did the show from your studio.
Yes, she is wonderful. She's really incredible artist, musician, and she owns a really incredible violin, Joseph Gagliano, and great bow. So and then I work on it all the time.
So what are some of the strangest instruments or some of the most fascinating instruments to come through your door?
The strangers, I'm trying not to take the most stranger because many people ask me, do you repair harps? Do you repair basses? Do you repair? I'm trying not to do it because then I got next day more calls like this. You know what I mean? So, but of course, there's a lot of incredible artists, I think, incredible musicians in New York that actually they knock the door, and they play different type of music, and I think this is incredible. Like, I have musicians who play Arabic music, Indian music, the traditional music. I have, of course, jazz musicians, bluegrass, Irish, besides of classical, of course. So, and I'm always fascinated what they're doing, what the ideas they have, what the instruments they have, right? Sometimes they bring something instrument which they bought in their countries, and they are a little bit weird or different. They have sometimes, like in the Arabic music or Indian, they have different tuning, or
Hmm.
sometimes they hold it differently or they play differently. So this what I'm very interested in this, but this what I want to know what to do and what they like it. So actually, I'm very interested of those kind of music. I listen it to find also the best sound, what they actually may need it, right? If they, many times I got my friends, they played for instance Indian music. They were looking for violin and they looking for this particular sound. So I understood the kind of music what they play, the kind of sounds. So I look at my instruments in my workshop, which are around 200, and I said, of course, they cannot play everything, and they will be confused in 5 minutes. So I have to know. Listen, I have violin for you. I think I know.
So you're like an instrument matchmaker. That makes complete
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. Violinmatch.com. So this is.
Not
I'm
Tinder
trying,
though.
yeah, because I'm trying to use the sense what they really like and what could be the match for this particular player. Even the bow, I mean, I like to try, like to listen, what kind of style, what kind of technique they have, and actually choose it and match this because it's very important to match the instrument, violin, viola, and the bow to the player, to the hand, and also the style what they play, and then and also to what they to compromise many different things and to make them better also. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting. So I think this New York is also, I appreciate it so much, this place, that actually those musicians, those, as you said, particular or crazy or different musicians or instruments can actually come to my place all the time. Or some musicians who are famous, who are well known, and they suddenly come here and they want my help, or they call me to go to to Carnegie Hall to adjust the violin because there's nobody in the city open. I'm trying
Ooh.
to be. I'm coming to be also very, like I'm. Somebody said I'm open 24 hours. But I try not to have the time. If I'm available, if somebody needs a doctor, a violin doctor, I'm here. I'm say come over. I'll help you. I can adjust it. I can do some work. During the pandemic, there was the same thing. Many people during the pandemic, they have the problem with the instrument. They didn't travel, or they didn't want, or so I was helping musicians during the time too. We were meeting downstairs, we were meeting on the street. I was fixing the instruments, or I was doing many different things that we could actually able to fix something even during this time. Of course, now is everything better, so we are able to do it, and many musicians can function. They can play again the concerts, but also what was important for me during this time, not only actually help them fix the instrument, but I was also kind of giving them kind of hope. And many musicians, they started to think maybe I should quit. Maybe why we have to play and this and this. Some people even called me, oh, maybe I should sell my violin. So I really was trying to encourage everyone. Please don't do it. This is your art. This is your love. This is only a year, maybe a little bit more. Don't worry. Everything is great. This is
Yeah, I did. There was an article in the New York Times about one of the cellists in the Met Orchestra who sold one of their cellos because mounting costs and the insurance on these instruments are astronomical. I mean,
yeah,
it was a challenge for us all certainly, but musicians are creative, and thankfully
yeah.
people like yourself were there to help and to help. We all had to help each other. We had so many artists, and it was not a great year, but it's a positive on the other side.
I think so. I think this, 2025 21, I think, will be the really great year, and I think we have to look forward and to be very optimistic and to be creative all the time. This is what
I have to ask. I was when I was an undergraduate, I was at a concert, and a professional orchestra came on tour, and someone fell and broke their violin. They smashed the violin. What is some of the worst situations you've had to fix, that you've had to go and repair and?
There was a lot of stuff, especially back in Europe, in Poland, when I was working. Some people were bringing so crazy broken instruments. They thought that maybe I can fix it, you know. And then because sometimes they broke this, or they were finding somewhere something like broken bowl in two places, and they think it's possible to fix, But usually the instrument, of course, I have many different repairs. There were a lot of cracks and apart, but we have to always decide if it's worth to do it or not, because if it's great example and great name and of course then we spend time to do it and to fix it. There was many stories like I think there was a Stradivari that was broken in pieces, or they found it, or there's a story that the Stradivari was in the water, and then when they took it out, they have to glue it piece by piece. I'm not sure who made this repair, but I heard it was stunning, and you couldn't even tell
Amazing.
that it was glued. This is amazing job, and many makers, restorers, they can do it today. So I think, but of course we have to always ask this question: what is possible to do it, and how far we can go with the repairs. And also, if there is a very good violin and we do restoration of the instruments, we have to be very careful not to actually to do the repairs in order to make it better also sounding, not to make it worse. So the best actually restorer and the violin maker who makes restoration and fixed instrument, it is thinking about acoustics, how to make it, how not to put too much wood inside, too much patches or too much stuff that would be strong, it would be great violin again, but then it doesn't sound like it used to sound. This is the worst thing that you can do, right?
Oh,
To actually
violin
like this,
malpractice.
because you are not fixing house, what I mean, to make it strong and stable for another 100 years. Yes, we are fixing violin, who has to be strong yet for many years, but it has to sound good. It has to be so basically we have to find this balance in between. So we cannot put too much stuff, we cannot repair sometimes something which doesn't have to be, or keep as much as we can original thing, original varnish, original piece. So this is very important to have this knowledge and have this balance and ideas, and to keep the instrument as best condition it is, but also to keep the instrument that actually can serve it as a great instrument, because it has to sound good. You know what I mean?
So we have a question, our first question from the audience. This is from Steve from Mississippi, and he asks, how many instruments have you made in your career so far?
I've made maybe 80, 90 instruments,
Wow.
which is actually not as a lot, but it's not a lot, because I have this. When I came to the States, I have period which I was repairing instruments, so I actually couldn't. I don't have time to fix it. So now I'm really trying to make more and more, because this is what I love to do. I love to actually create new instruments. To fill the wood. Of course, I'm not saying that I don't like to fix instruments, or sell, or meeting customers, or helping them to find a new violin, because it's also exciting. It's exciting to meet students or little kids that they're looking for three-quarter violin or something, and I'm servicing, and I make the service. But I think it more fun, of course, is to make the instruments. So I make possible 6 instruments per year right now.
Wow.
Or if I only make instruments without my shop, I'll probably make even more. But my goal is actually making more, and I have a lot of ideas on the paper on my head to do different instrument, different designs.
I've
which
seen a
are
few of them. I saw
yeah,
besides the Vetus, which is in front of us. I also saw your violin based on the Statue of Liberty,
yes,
which
yes.
was stunning. It had the varnish, had the image in the varnish. I mean, just incredible creative work of art.
Yeah, this violin was made how to say it, inspiration of Statue of Liberty, which is the most famous statue. And when I came to New York,
Venus de Milo would debate that.
when I came to New York, I was like, I have to do something like this, something different. And I was like, Statue of Liberty is, I think, the icon of New York, right? Is a symbol of New York. It's a symbol, of course, also of immigrants, and I am one of them. You know what I mean? I feel like I am actually American, New Yorker, and I feel like at home. I can say, but at the beginning, I felt like immigrant, and I said, let me do something for this, for this country. Let me contribute something in honor of this. You know what I mean? So I was like, why not to do something in my field, like Lady Liberty violin, which I put this head of Lady Liberty. The shape was a little bit different with the gold wire and
Hmm.
like a little bit Art Deco, which is kind of New York also, a little bit more modern tradition vibe. And and I wrote on the ribs, tolerance, liberty, peace. I think this is like the symbols of Lady Liberty.
How
But I
special! Now,
think
where is that violin now?
now actually is actually in the hand of the young violinist in New York, which he play like this pop, electric pop, DJ and stuff. So he's actually performing a lot of concert in New York on this violin, and people, he's really happy because this violin
Totally
makes
unique.
a lot of room unique and rumor. People take photos. People takes photos with him with the violin. There's a lot of stories that he always tell me that listen who I met, you know what I mean, and they took photo with your violin, because it's unique. And I think this is what I want to do also, a part of the tradition about the violin making. What I do. I think this my idea of creation and to be in the 21st century, to be as a violin maker, actually to be also creative person, and do something else and
I feel a
something.
lot the same way. Like, as a classical artist, I feel like I have a foot in the past and a foot in the future.
Yeah.
Kind of living in the present, and it's pretty marvelous tradition to be a part of. What's it
Yes.
like to watch your instruments being played by the great players of the world? What does it feel like to see that happen?
I was amazed. I think it's amazing feeling because you know that, oh, I've made it. Of course, this is this is not me. This is the musician. If somebody plays well, the violin plays well. So but it's something special. I think that each violin maker can feel it, that when he can hear the instrument which we make, and we learn a lot also. So because to learn about the sound, the quality of the sound, about the projection, about the changings, and about improving is constant. You know what I mean? Like after the concert like this, we can have an idea. Oh, maybe we should do this, and it's always experimental too. You know what I mean? So it's not like this that when I make some instruments, the next one will be the same or maybe better. I can, we of course we try somehow to make it something different, something better, but it's really incredible to listen always. And those instruments always change too. I have a lot of musicians who owns my instrument that they come to me, and I adjust, I fix. They travel even from many different cities, especially to me to look at this. Tomorrow, actually, my friend Rizvan is coming from Las Vegas to here. He's going to have actually some concert here, and he's bringing his viola, which I've made, and he's saying that he's going to spa with his viola, to because he said he needs it. He needs spa. He needs the doctor. He needs the fixing. He needs the adjusting. Of course, it sounds good, but it needs some.
Every string player I've ever worked with always like has to be going to be tuned up. It's like a car, it has to go in and be tuned up and
Yeah,
planed, and everything has to be done to make sure it's optimal
exactly.
working condition.
And I'm really thrilled and happy to see my instrument bag and my and musician, that it plays and owns, because it's the best to see. When musicians are happy, and they really love it, because this is the goal, to that when we make the violin, that somebody can really enjoy it and love it, and that actually it can serve their success and career, that actually makes them better. You know what I mean?
So there's so many challenges with the performing artist. I'm always amazed to watch the combination, the synthesis of instrument and player. Now, I've seen studies, blind studies, with just listening, where people think it's an old instrument, but it's actually a modern. What's your take on the modern versus the ancient violins, and the difference in sounds and the quality of the two?
Modern makers have this um, really got actually to the perfection somehow, like in music and actually everything these days, that we actually can make great instrument, like they actually can sound to be comparable to the old instrument, to be on this level, we can say, right? So it projects, they are great sounding, because we have this knowledge, like I was saying before. We know the tradition, we know different styles. So basically, today the makers, we learn a lot, and actually we can make good instruments, basically. But of course, when we have this blind test, many times more modern instruments actually win, because maybe modern instruments are more healthy, they are more resonating, you know. But of course, it's very personal. Sometimes, when you are buying and when you own old instrument, sometimes it's not only about this all about the history, all about the stuff what you have. Of course, many musicians have two instruments, have the old one, have the modern instrument, and you can really appreciate it, both of them, I think, equally. They are basically different. I wouldn't say, I would never say, not because I'm a violin maker, that the modern violin is better, or older is better. It's basically different. It's a
You
different.
work on you work on everything. You said you
Yeah,
have a violin behind you from the 1600s, and you've got the ones that you're making today. So
yeah.
it's
So
like the complete range.
basically, it really doesn't matter. Modern violin can be better than old, and older might be better than newer, because actually it is better. It doesn't mean that even Stradivari, that if we put 10 instruments in front of us, each one it will be a little bit different, and maybe you wouldn't like one of them. One of them maybe you will love it, and if I put my violin or somebody else here, maybe we can actually make a competition, little bit competition. So sometimes those competitions between modern and old, they are more, for me, is a more like a, how they say it, business, business ask,
PR, public
PR for,
relations.
I did this exam that my modern one is better, so you have to buy it. You know what I mean? Yes, of course it can be better, but not necessarily that each modern violin can be better than older one. We are buying old violins, or musicians are buying violins, older violins, not only for music purposes. There is a purposes like a investment. There is a in purpose of the, because they are collectible. So all the instruments are not only because it's a sound. Somebody owns the Stradivari because it's collectible instrument, and I
Have
want
you
to have.
seen some of being in New York City? Have you seen any really fascinating collections, private collections that maybe people don't know about?
Yeah, there are actually. I'm still actually finding, often people who actually owns the instruments here, and I don't know, and I want to. All I know of, and I want to know. Actually, they have a beautiful collection at the Met Museum of the old instruments. Incredible. If you are in New York, it's actually very nice to go, because you can see great example of the Stradivari, Amati, and many great makers. And of course, many musicians in New York, they own beautiful instruments. I have also quite a nice collection of the instruments here, and the bows and stuff. But in Europe, there's a lot of different collectors. These days, also a lot of collectors are in Asia. In Taiwan, there's a beautiful collection, and a lot of orchestras, organizations, banks even started to collect art, not only papers, but actually instruments, because they noticed during the years that there's the real value, which will never disappear. never
Well, there's
disappear.
only fewer and fewer of those instruments every decade, right? Whether
Yeah.
it be war or some fire or some act of God, those instruments are
Yes,
incredibly rare. They're
and,
part of
and
human
actually,
culture.
yeah, they are always there, and actually they appreciate it. Good instrument appreciate every year at least, like, of course, good name, reputation where the instrument is soft after they appreciate it at least 5% to 7% every year.
Wow.
So basically, it's quite good if you compare to the stocks or different. If of course this investment is not for everyone, it's not for the stock market, or it's not maybe for people who are dealing with kind of different ideas of the sales. Because when you buy the violin, you cannot sell it for next month. This investment is for long-term investment, and this investment is more and collection, it is more for music lovers, for for musicians. Sometimes not necessary, of course, but it could be for musicians. It's like for art collectors. Not always art collectors are painters, right? They love art. So this is why sometimes when people own the instruments, they are musicians. Many times they cannot afford it. Unfortunately, I wish many great violinists they could have great violins, but sometimes they are in the hands of collector, and he can help musicians. He can lend, he can borrow to the musicians. And there's a lot of instruments which actually from the collections, from the hand of the sponsor, of the great person who actually can lend it. Like in Europe, many banks, Deutsche banks, or many people actually sponsor great instruments, and they own it because they know it's not only great idea, very beautiful idea, but it's also collectible item. And also, what I always tell people, like when they want to start collection, that is also our kind of our. It's not only we're doing for music, for love, and for musician that they can really use it, but it's our kind of responsibility to keep those instruments as long as we can. So actually, if they are in the good hands and they cannot be destroyed, they can actually be in the safe place for as long as we can, is better. So if the violin is actually a collector, even if it's not used but it's safe and it can be used sometimes, is better. It's better than if some hands of.
It's like protecting culture, right? It's like protecting
We
history and
collect.
culture all in one.
Yeah, so sometimes, of course, if you see those instruments in the museums, you can see, and many musicians are kind of opposite and mad. Oh, why they don't play it? Why they don't use it? It should be played. Of course, that's true because all instrument has its soul, has to be used, has to be played. And I'm very glad many times when museums and or sponsors or collectors, they organize concert or they give to the musicians to play. But it's also important to keep them also actually safe and actually not used that much, because we can make sure that they can last forever almost, right? So the
If
instrument.
you could ask, if you could ask Antonio Stradivari one question, what would it be?
uh, One question for Stradivari in Italian. Yeah.
That's up to you.
This is difficult because of course I will have a lot of questions,
Give us a few.
but of course, I think each violin maker will ask him about the recipe of his varnish. Because this is the one thing which we actually mostly don't know. Everything which we see the Stradivari, we could actually see. Oh, he made like this. Oh, this we can actually copy, but varnish is something that we actually don't know. So I think this one question will be about the varnish. How you did this ground and varnish, which is mystical, which is with the idea of the sound of the varnish. I think this will be the question which mostly each violin maker will ask the Stradivari. You know.
Very good. And what did you think about the movie The Red Violin? I have to ask.
I think it's excellent. I think it's excellent because some people have different opinions about this, about the story, but I think the story is beautiful because if you if you're gonna to think about the violin, it could be actually like a person. It could be like it has its soul. So each instrumentalist, each violinist, actually can give it his part, his soul to it, So I think it's an amazing movie, which also shows a little bit of the violin making, which is not too many movies about this, and not too many you can actually see. And many people actually, because of this movie, got a little bit interested of violin, of violin makers, of the construction, because they could see, oh, what he was doing. Oh, this is the violin maker. I didn't know, right? So actually, I think it was a brilliant movie that
It
they
raised some great awareness, and I couldn't believe that Samuel L. Jackson played a violin dealer. I'm like, that's interesting to me. Okay.
you know and of course, there's some kind of details and stuff like this. I don't know, I don't want to criticize, but I like it, and I think it's beautiful to show about the art of violin making in the also in the film, and I think should be more something like this, because this tradition, this this kind of profession is not really known more to the public, right? Violinists and musicians, of course, they know that they have to go to the violin maker, but even then, sometimes they don't know. Even they even ask me question. Oh, so what is the wood? I was like, so you don't know? You played the violin 20 years, and you don't know that this is maple? So of course, those stuff we should tell more. We should, in the movies, in the everywhere. So I'm glad, and thank you that we speak about this, because people may know more, or if they or they can have open ideas, but maybe they can search something for something else, or maybe some people may like to do it, or may to get inspired to be a violin maker, because there's a
Where can
beautiful.
people go to find out more about your work and your shop?
They could go to my website, of course, Lukas Violins. They could find me on social media, and I'm very happy to always to speak with everyone. I will always try to respond. I promise. And they can find me in New York. They can find me in Manhattan, Upper West Side, 96 on Broadway, which is almost open 24 hours. Like many musicians knows, because I live where I work. This is actually my office space, but actually in this apartment, I'm here all the time. I feel like I live in my workshop, which
You
this is
live in
what
you live your passion. That's such a wonderful thing.
yeah, this is what I always wanted to do, and I think for violin maker is something special, because you live and you make those violins. You wake up, or you sometimes you have to varnish something, and you're waking and you're waiting few hours, and you kind of think, okay, I will wake up at 3 a.m. and I do something. So this is something that I think each violin maker, even in the past, they always were working at homes, right? When I went to Cremona, I worked close to the Stradivari house. It
Wow.
was a beautiful old house, and he lived there and he worked there. You know what I mean?
The
So
house is still standing, and it's like, wow.
yes, yes, it is. The Cremona hasn't been, of course, destroyed. Like Polish parts of Eastern European. So there's there's a house. There used to be a there is a museum of Stradivari, so you can see his tools, heels, molds, and everything. So you can actually get to know the maker, and of course there's the house of Stradivari, which of course somebody else lived there. But it was like this. It was a small type of townhouse, like Cremonis, that he had 3 floors, I think, and he had a lot of kids, a lot of violins. They
It
helped him,
helps.
a lot of apprentice, and he was one of the most famous violin maker in this era. That people were coming to him from all over the world, from all over the Europe, and kings, musicians, and his instrument. That's why he was the most sought after actually violin maker until and it will be all the time.
Do you currently have an apprentice?
Not really. I mean, many people ask me, but it's very hard to do everything. I wish actually, and I'm looking for always not only apprentice, but somebody who can actually handle and help me in my violin shop also. You know what I mean? But I'm actually looking for somebody skillful, somebody talented that actually can help me to even expand, because I take everything one shoulder. You know what I mean? But it's a lot of to do. So, but
Well, you have so much. You have so much accumulated mastery to pass on. So I look forward to seeing how you do that as time goes on.
Yeah. So yeah, well, we will see. We will see how it goes. But of course, it's good to have a student apprentice. And I think I'm looking forward to actually to pass also some knowledge. But of course, there's a lot of makers, or they actually I met and here in Poland that we share our knowledge or tradition. So I think.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule.
Well, it's
To
my pleasure.
the maestro of luthiers from New York City, we have Lukas Wronski, and I thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thank you so much for watching Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to like and subscribe our videos, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Smash that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Thank you so much, and remember, keep music alive.